The topic for the discussion for our panel is new ways to do credit and monitoring in the new age world. So there have been a large number of discussions in the morning, and the topic of credit and monitoring has come up. I think both governor and deputy governor spoke about the new ways of doing monitoring and credit. We'd like to have a focused discussion on the same. What we'll do is, I'll take about 10 minutes and talk about some facts and some figures and some food for discussion, and then we'll start the panel discussion. So as everyone in the room would be aware, there's been a marked slowdown in the credit growth in India. What this chart shows is that over the last 15 years, the credit growth in India has always been between 15 and 30%, on an average about 20%. It used to always grow at about 2 to 3x the rate of growth of GDP. But over the last 2 years, it's come down to single digit numbers. And what's also common knowledge is that the NPAs are rising. In fact, it's a full swing up. If you see, it's like a cup. It used to be about 7.2% in 2004. We're back to the same levels now, around 2016. However, if we de-average the NPA numbers, there is one silver lining. The silver lining is in retail loans. So what you see on this page is the de-average view of NPAs over the last 5 years, 2011, 2013, 2016, for retail, agri, MSME and corporate. Right? And while for agri, MSME and corporate, the NPAs have gone up quite substantially, they've come down quite dramatically in case of retail. And the question is, why is that? And what is the learning that we can have for the other sectors? Right? And there are many learnings. I think I'd like to point out 2 of them here. In the early 2000s, when a lot of retail started happening in India, there was very little data that existed for retail customers in India. And a lot of institutions, NBFCs and banks actually burned fingers while doing retail credit cards, consumer durable loans. But a lot has changed over the last 15 years. Today, the credit bureau has become a very powerful source of information for banks. We can have a more detailed discussion. We have Mr. Sadish Pillai sitting here in the panel. But also banks have developed a lot of risk models for retail customers where they're able to predict risk much better. Right? The question is, it does not happen for the other sectors. What would it take for the same to happen for MSME and for corporates? Now moving on, so these were some facts about the past. Now moving on, what can we expect in the future? While over the last 15 years, retail loans have really grown at a very brisk pace, there is still a lot of under-penetration in terms of overall retail loans in India. If you take one example, mortgages, and mortgages as a percentage of overall GDP, it is only 9% in India right now. And if you take similar markets in Asia, like China, Thailand, Malaysia, Hong Kong, it's anywhere from 15, 20, 25%. And the developed markets, it's substantially higher. What this means is that if India's mortgage penetration were to achieve the levels of other Asian markets, let's assume 15-20%, retail loans and mortgages will continue to grow 2 to 3 times out of GDP over the next 5-10 years. Right? So the growth, the demand is there, the latent demand for retail loans is there. Another sector which is really under-penetrated is MSME. And the deputy governor spoke about 78% of MSMEs actually use informal sources of credit. If you actually look at data, over the last 20 years, what this chart shows is the growth rates of the different sectors in India, MSME, agriculture, retail, and mid-corporate. And what you see here is quite stark. Over 20 years, while agriculture, retail, and large corporates all grow between 18-25%, MSME is only growing at 12%. It is not because MSMEs don't require credit, it's because banks are unable to give loans to MSMEs. Right? And the question is, what would it take for banks to lend to MSMEs? And this is not an easy task. It's not easy because there are several challenges when it comes to MSME. One of them is that India still is a very large unorganized economy. So what you see on this page is the percentage of workforce that is unorganized in India is about 40%. In China, it's only 15%. And these are non-agricultural sectors. Agriculture is almost 100% unorganized. 50% of population is anyway in agriculture. right? What this means for banks is that there are no documents that these people have. They can't produce a document that the banks can use to lend money. And then banks have to rely on physical touch and feel. Go and meet the customer, do an interview, do a credit assessment, right? Spend a lot of time, right? And then arrive at an answer which may or may not be perfect, right? And then give a loan, right? The question is, how can this change, right? And is the time, are we sitting at the right time for this to change in a very dramatic and a decisive manner? Now, one example of what can happen when there is a very credible security and the latent demand that exists in the economy is gold loans. So if you look at it, over the last several years, gold loans have just bloomed in India. Right? It's grown at a compound annual rate of 50%. This shows that there is a lot of latent demand for credit, provided there is a credible security. Right? And with that security, this is gold. Now, my argument is that going forward, banks or financial institutions don't need to take gold from customers. They can just use data. Can data be the next goal? Can data be the next goal? Is the point that we should discuss in this panel. Can the banks just rely on data from customers and then we feel as safe to lend to customers as they would by keeping the customers' gold with them? Now, India is at the cusp of a massive digital disruption. I think there was a lot of talk on this topic in the morning. I'll just briefly highlight three important elements of what's happening in India. On the very left-hand side, if you look at the infrastructure that's being created, we are creating an unprecedented scale of infrastructure in India in terms of digital. Almost every adult Indian already has or will have shortly a biometric identity. There is no other country in the world where such a large scale of biometric identity program has been rolled out. The Parliament has just rolled out the GST bill, and if GST gets implemented, what will happen is that a lot of value chains will have to get digitized. If people need to implement GST in the true manner, where everyone can get input credit, they need to have digital invoices. We estimate that 3 to 5 billion invoices will get digitized. Very rich source of data for the banks. Today, the banks rely on physical invoices that are fraught with risks to take any decisions for lending. Right? NPCI has just rolled out UPI. It can be quite game-changing in terms of peer-to-peer payments and so on and so forth. So a lot of basic infrastructure is either already there or is becoming available in the next couple of years. On the other side, the customers actually are already ready. The customers are ready, and this is known by many different industries that have completely switched to digital. So banking will not be the first industry where customers will have a wholesale change from physical to digital channels. Right? If you look at the number of mobile phones, the number of people using internet, it all shows that customers are already ready to adopt digital. And what this means for banks? What this means for banks is that India is moving away from a data poor country to a data rich country. And the way you do banking in a very data poor country is very different from the way you can do banking in a data rich environment. Right? In a data poor environment, you rely on physical judgment, you rely on the branch managers, understanding of the customer, the local knowledge to take a decision. In a data rich environment, you can rely on analytics, you can rely on models to take the same decision. Right? It's a very different way of doing banking. And what this has done is that it has given rise to a large number of startups in the fintech space. In the year 2015 alone, there were 174 fintechs that were established in India, 174 different companies, all looking at opportunities to make a difference in the financial services space, primarily led by companies looking at lending, at payments, at personal technologies. And on the right hand side, you will see that this space has got the second largest amount of funding of all startups in India, just after retail. That's the amount of funding that's coming into the space. Right? And the question, for this panel would be, do you think fintechs are enemies that will compete with banks, or they are potential partners that banks can partner with and serve the customers better? And finally, if you look at what's happening to the entire economy and the way that business is being done, even that is changing quite dramatically. So if you take three examples here, if you take agriculture, transportation, taxis, and retail, all three are examples where traditionally this has been a very, very fragmented industries, where small farmers, small individuals who drive taxis or small mom and pop corner stores were all small fragmented entities. Very difficult for banks to reach out to them, small ticket size of lending, and no data that they can rely on. All three industries are getting organized. So in agriculture, there is a rise for contract farming, where large stores, large chains are bypassing all the middlemen and going straight to farmers and having, contract agreements. We all know what Uber and Olas have done to the taxi segment. And now there are startups in the field of logistics that are trying to replicate what's happened to personal use of transportation to commercial use. Right? Something similar is happening on the commercial side. And the retail story, I think, is well known. The Amazons, the Flipkarts, is a story that's well known to all of us. So people are getting organized under ecosystems where banks can now have access to same customers in a more digital manner and access to data that is very rich. And the question is, what can banks do with this information? Right? And if you look at it, there are four things that banks can do differently going forward. The very first one is that they can start forging corporate tie-ups. Right? Go and tie up with the Pepsi, an ITC, that has a direct dealing with the end farmers or the entire supply chain that they deal with. Once you tie with the corporate, the banks can start designing solutions that are tailor-made to an industry, that are based on cash flow of all the entities in the value chain and not just merely on the balance sheets. The third thing is that the entire operating model can become digital, right from lead sourcing to getting data to taking a credit decision to disposing the loan to opening a current account to monitoring. End-to-end value chain can become digital. Right? It can dramatically reduce costs. It can also reduce risks. Right? And finally, on an ongoing basis, you can access a lot of rich information from the corporates, and this information can be used for smart monitoring. Right? And this is not the way that it is today, but potentially a way in which business can happen going forward once large parts of the economy starts moving towards this model. So I'll just end here. We've kind of given different facets of what's happening in the industry, and you can start the panel discussion now.